Hello everybody, and welcome to what's going to be the fourth video in this series of really designed for 2024, just to help people understand and manage better the huge governmental transitioning that is going on, where it's way beyond anything that we have ever imagined before. And I love the way God actually deals with us. And remember, I've already talked about the way authority has transitioned in the Bible. And so far I've used the Old Testament, but you'll see that's going to change as well. And we've had a look at the shift between the leadership of Moses and then the leadership of Joshua, and how sadly Moses didn't get to see the promised land. And then we had a look at the way that Israel started to look at the other nations and wanted a king and rejected God and his judge, Prophet Samuel. And finally, we get the story of Saul, and sadly, that didn't finish too well. And now we are going to look at the transition between Elijah and Elisha, which is such a very human story. It really touches my heart, this one. I love Elijah. And once again, you'll see that there's mention of a place called Gilgal. And it's fascinating to realize just how consistent the Bible actually is. And you'll see what I mean. You might maybe not have even noticed this. I didn't until the Lord pointed it out to me. All right. So Elijah has got to a point in his career. He's a prophet. You might not be a prophet, but I'm sure you've also been at places in your career where you feel a total failure, where the enemy is attacking you, whether it's Jezebel, whether it is circumstances, whatever it is, and you feel that your whole life, your ministry, whatever it is, has been a total failure. And well, the mighty prophet Elijah gets to that stage, and it's there that we are very, very vulnerable indeed. And you will see there in 1 Kings and chapter 19, look at some of the statements Elijah's making here. I wonder if you're guilty of making some of them. I certainly have had my parts as well. And Jezebel is after him, and she means business, that lady, and so does the principality that's still operating in that name today. Believe you me, it is not funny. And of course, Jezebel really does want to kill Elijah. She's already tried to kill so many of the prophets. And so what does Elijah do? He runs for his life. I would like to say stand up and fight Elijah, but then I'm quite aware that there have been times, where I haven't done so well either. Maybe you'd like to think about it too. And he runs into the wilderness by himself. And it says in verse 4, he prays to the Lord and he says, now, Lord, just take my life. I just want to die. I'm no better than my fathers. And he lies down under the broom tree, and an angel appears and doesn't say to him, don't do it, Elijah. Just says, look, get up and eat. And he's given strength to get to Mount Horeb, the holy mountain of God. And there he goes into a cave. And of course, he really thinks it is the end. He wants it to be the end. He feels he's been a total failure. And it's easy for you and me to say, no, you weren't, Elijah. But when you're on your own and vulnerable, it's quite another thing. And I'm already praying hard this year for people who feel like Elijah did. And what happens? God knows his man. Isn't it wonderful to think how much God knows and cares, even when we've given up, and says to him in the cave, what are you doing here, Elijah? Because clearly he probably shouldn't have been there, right? And of course, all Elijah can say, I've been very zealous. All the prophets are gone. I'm the only one left. And they're seeking to kill me as well. And God doesn't even answer him. He takes him out and says, go and stand at the mouth of the cave. Elijah does it. It's so famous, this bit, and shows him a mighty earthquake. Can you imagine? He had to stand there while these huge rocks are being smashed into bits. And then there's a huge wind. Then there's the fire. But then it says so beautifully that the Lord wasn't in any of these huge events. And I'm thinking this year about us, so many things are being smashed up all around us, and we look at those things, but what we really need to do, even if we've heard this message 1,000 times, is listen to that still small voice. And it's there that God really touches the heart of his prophet. He knows Elijah has been beaten up. His emotions have been absolutely shaken. I suppose today the psychologists would call it, he's been deeply, deeply traumatized. And it happens, yes, to Christians even today. We can be deeply traumatized and we're just not thinking straight anymore, are we? And then, of course, God doesn't even answer Elijah's questions and tells him what to do. And then very beautifully says, and look, go and anoint Elisha, who's going to be prophet in your stead. So in a way, God is already beginning to release him. But you see beautifully the interaction between these two, between Elijah and Elisha, who faithfully serves him. And oh boy, I think that Elijah really needed Elisha at that point. And God is looking after both of them. I think it's wonderful. So maybe it'll give some help and some hope to people who are having a rough time and who really do feel humanly alone. It's not impossible. Even as a Christian minister, it is not impossible to feel like that. And now let's look at amazing what happens in the second book of Kings and chapter 2. And once again, I was amazed when I found this. I hope you're going to enjoy it as well. It says in 2 Kings chapter 2 and verse 1, it came to pass when the Lord was about to take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. Yes, you've got it again. It's the place of governmental transition. And here, of course, what's amazing is that Elijah knows, Elisha knows, and the school of the prophets also know, except in this case, you know, you could be an absolute nuisance with what you know, and they get in the way, don't they? And they try to say to Elisha, well, did you know your master's going to be taken up? You know, they're not stupid, they are God's prophets, but they just totally get in the way on this occasion and then finally get out of the way. And I love what actually happens here when I won't teach again about the sequence of events and how Elijah apparently tries to discourage Elisha, who actually he's been training up and he knows already, they both know that Elisha's going to be prophet in Elijah's stead. And what is absolutely beautiful, that Elijah wants to do something for his successor. He wants to do something for Elisha. It's quite a beautiful handover, like a smooth baton change, even though Elisha has to really hang on in there. And I'm praying that people do hang on in there this year. And Elijah says something really curious to Elisha. He says, if you see me taken up, then the thing you've asked for, which was in Elisha's case, he wants that double portion. If you see me being taken up, well, then it will be yours. But if you don't see me, you won't. Now, I've noticed a lot when the Bible talks about seeing and lifting up your eyes, it's not just about seeing physically, it's about seeing with a clarity in the spiritual realm, just as clearly as you're seeing the people standing in front of you at that time. And of course, Elisha does see Elijah being taken up to heaven. And he does see him being taken up alive. It must have been the most amazing thing ever. And we know that Elisha carries on that he has double the spirit of Elijah. And what's beautiful, again, we meet this term a few times in the Bible, that the prophets who've been an absolute nuisance actually are observing the scene. And what they do observe, they say the spirit of Elijah is on Elisha, is resting on him. The spirit, the ruach, the breath of Elijah is now resting on Elisha. They haven't seen what Elisha saw, but they understand that the same spirit is now, and of course we know he's got a double portion of it, resting on Elisha. And I just pray that this year, that we will see some smooth baton changes. I do believe that God in his mercy, you know, that he has care for those who've been beaten up and wounded in battle, those who've said, I wish, Lord, you would just take me now, I feel a failure. And God will come and strengthen them, and that he will strengthen as well, so that the next generation will be able to take over. I don't know how it works in everyone's case. I just know that God cares for the prophets who've served him well. He cares for the evangelists and the pastors and the saints who've served him well. And he knows at what point you cannot perhaps go on anymore. And I pray for those who are feeling lonely, who are feeling a failure. And before finishing this, the next bit is going to get more exciting again, because we haven't finished with Elijah yet. He appears once again, and I can't wait to tell you the next bit of the story. But for now, be encouraged. And even if you're hiding out by yourself for a while, even if you're trying to tell God you don't want to go on anymore, I'm praying that you will be encouraged. And whether you yourself go on for a while, whether you get to train a person or a group of people who will then continue the work, so let God choose it. But be encouraged, because he loves you so very dearly and so wants to nourish and encourage and console and empower you in this hour. Amen, everybody.